Welcome to Cash Talk, the podcast where we delve into the depths of finance, business, and life itself. I'm your host, John Cachia, a multi-award-winning wealth advisor with a passion for empowering ambitious Australians to confidently achieve financial freedom. Hey everyone, before we get started, this is a quick reminder that everything in this podcast is of a general nature and nothing has been tailored to your personal circumstances. So please seek personal financial advice before acting on this information. And we're back, and today I'm joined by Ayten, a wealth advisor at Thriving Wealth. How are you?
I'm very well, John. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. First episode on Cash Talk.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Feeling a bit nervous, but I'm happy to be here, so thank you for having me here.
Yeah, well, we were eager to get you on. As an advisor who's also a parent as well, we're going to be diving into the topic about teaching kids the right foundations about money and so on. So for you, this is obviously important for you because it's a close thing to teach your kids about money, but also we see a lot of parents and a lot of young families coming to us. So eager to deep dive into this one as a parent myself, hopefully share some of my knowledge and some of my techniques that I'm using with my kids, and hopefully for each and every one of you, you can take some of these away to apply for your kids or to your grandkids as well too. So what are you doing with your kids with money?
Well, so I've got two young kids. My daughter is 4 and my son is 3, and they're quite young at the moment, so it's really hard to have a deeper, meaningful conversation about, money. But I'm just doing little things, like, for example, if we go shopping, with the trade-off conversations. If you want this, we might have to, forego this. And if you want this, we might have to forego this. So just kind of introducing them to money and budgeting, and then slowly and shortly kind of build that knowledge up.
Is this something that you and your husband talk about, like around how you want your kids to learn about money? How do you guys go as a couple talking about this? Because obviously your kids are still quite young, so trying to comprehend some of these things that we'll talk about today are a little bit difficult. But is it something that you and your husband talk about? Yeah,
it's an ongoing conversation. For example, we'll have a discussion about birthday parties. Are we going to do a birthday party? And then relay that back to my daughter. For example, she's turning 5 this year. And we said, we're not going to have a birthday party because we're going overseas. So that's something that we're working towards and trying to get her to understand. We have to forego this because we're, planning for something else and we've got a different goal in mind.
Yeah, so what you can see what she's doing is having open conversations with her husband, which is very, very important. And I would say for most people, this is where it all starts, around having an open conversation about what you do with money yourself, how your kids are observing yourself with these behaviours, but also as well too, what you want to do for your household in regards to how you want to teach your kids about money. So having a really good role model scenario where you're doing the right things and then your kids can see them is really important. And I think one thing that you're doing as well too, Ayten, is talking about trade-off discussions with children as well too. I find as time has gone on, many people have, if they want something, they just get it on credit card or they get it on personal loan or they refinance their house, and there's no real sacrifice or trade-off to get that, and therefore has ballooning debt situation and causes significant issues down the track because you're essentially taking from your tomorrow and giving for today. And with our children being young, I can't see the accessibility to debt being more restrictive as time goes on. I see it becoming more accessible with buy now, pay later schemes and everyone doing lay-by. So these kids are observing that if they want something, they have it. So it's really, really good for you to be teaching those trade-offs around, we're going to Europe, for example, so we can't have the birthday.
Yeah.
Is there certain things that you've seen in your behaviour that you have maybe had to correct? And we're all human here. It's not like we're perfect with her. But has there been some where you've been like, maybe I should improve myself to be the role model for my daughter and obviously your son as he grows up?
Yeah, I mean, really we're a product of our past, aren't we? Because, we've grown up in an environment and we think that's normal. So what we do is we kind of model ourselves off our parents, and that's all we know. So for example, for myself, I remember something that happened to myself very distinctly when I was around 13, 14. My mum gave me $20 to go to the movies and, showing my age. But back in the day, you could buy a movie ticket. I bought a movie ticket. I bought some popcorn. I bought some drinks and I bought a couple of other things. And I went home with a couple of dollars. And then my mum got really upset. She's like, what happened to all the money? And that for me kind of cemented in my mind that okay, well, it's not, you can't just go and willy-nilly spend money. You've got to work hard for it, and you've got to save. So my mum, coming from a single family household, she worked 2 jobs. So that to me really instilled that behaviour of working hard, saving, and then spending the money where you need to spend the money. And so going back to your question, it's really easy these days for our kids to kind of see us. We've got a credit card or we've got a debit card. So you just go to the shops, you're tapping. They don't actually see physical money. And like you mentioned before, buy now, pay later. It's so prominent these days. So it's really easy for you to just, instill these habits into your children without even noticing. You're just paying, tap, 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 and the kids, I see kids these days as well, wanting themselves to tap, grabbing the card and wanting to tap when you're going shopping, tap when you're going grocery. And these are the kind of things that you need to step back, I feel in my opinion, that you need to have a discussion with them. Okay, so we are tapping, but this money comes from where? Where does the money come from? How do we earn this money? Really having those deep conversations about how to earn money and what it means to spend money.
Definitely. And I think what I've found as well too with my boys is around establishing what you would maybe establish for a typical 16, 17-year-old as early as possible. Like both of my sons have bank accounts with a card that's attached because they're not going to be using cash. Let's be honest. So we need to teach them the behaviours of using that card. So when they go bip, I get the receipt printed out, even if it's like a $6 transaction, and I show them coming out of their bank account. Like they're not seeing this as an endless pot of money. They're seeing their money depleting. And they see that if they make effort, there's reward. So, for example, not just general chores about picking up after yourself, but if they go above and beyond, we reward that, okay? And so that is trying to build a work ethic around them having to do extra stuff. And when they do extra stuff, they're getting the reward. That money's going to their bank account. They're then spending the money. Interestingly enough, my older boy, not my younger one, still 4, so he's still establishing his habits, but the older one, I have found has really stopped buying things because it's his money that he's seeing depleting. He's seeing the effort that he needs to do to get the reward and therefore doesn't want to give it up. And so we're creating these really, really great savings habits, but it's also on the back of talking about things. If we go to buy an investment property, they're coming with us. They're not like, it's not taboo and they're like, no, it's in the other place. No, we're going to go to the inspection. We're going to look at what we look at in regards to a house, why it's a good thing. Go back, have the discussion at the kitchen table, me, my wife, my kids, having these talk. So talking about this, which was once taboo, is very important to have these discussions on. And I'm already seeing the behaviours in my children that I sometimes struggle with people in their 20s and 30s and 40s doing. And if we can establish these right behaviours, I'm hoping that we're setting up the right foundations for these kids moving forward because I'm seeing already the fruits of our effort by doing this. Now, obviously, this is very close to our heart in regards to this is our role. So it probably is much easier for me and my wife to do this and like yourself and your husband. So we appreciate that this is sometimes a little bit harder for everyone that's listening or watching this. But it's also the benefit of working with someone like us because we're also teaching clients around the behaviours that they can improve. And then what does that mean for their children? What's the behaviours that they're doing? So it's the observations of your own modelling yourself, but also around the actual behaviours themselves. Now, what was interesting enough that I just wanted to touch on around your story, it was, so you said you came from a single mother family. Okay, she was working 2 jobs. Do you find that scarcity mindset that I've got to work so hard for my money? What did that do for you in regards to your ability to grow wealth for yourself first and for your family? How do you think that influenced you?
It had a massive influence because I learned from a young age that in order for me to want to buy something, I needed to work hard for it. And I couldn't rely on my mum because she was, too busy trying to work 2 jobs and help. And provide. We didn't come from a very wealthy family, but I got a good education. And that's because my mum worked hard. So shortly after actually that episode that I just talked about, I actually started working at the cinema. So I was working and I was saving my money. So I became a saver because I knew that I needed money for whatever it is that I want to buy, a goal in the future. So that kind of instilled the saving quality, and then eventually later down the track, that kind of, moved me towards the investor kind of, mentality. But first a saver, always wanting to have the money so I can, for a rainy day, or if I'm saving for something, I can buy that without having to rely on other people, even if that is your parents.
Do you find that your upbringing also influenced your investor behavior? So what I'm meaning by this, everyone, is not the same as Ayten, but I've got my own story. Yeah. It influences the child at such a young age around not just the decisions that they'll make in their teens. This goes on into their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. And if you're not aware of what the influences are, you're then not able to adapt and change and build new behaviors. Like, if you don't, imagine like you never look in a mirror and you never know you're overweight. Like, having that ability to know you're overweight, looking in the mirror, you can then go and say, okay, yes, I am overweight.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do something about it. And so does that saver mindset from a risk perspective, from investing, do you believe that has created that lower risk tolerance than maybe you've observed with, say, other people who haven't had that upbringing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, like I mentioned before, you're a product of your past. So if you're not exposed to that, then investing in shares, for example, that might seem risky. I still have, people today saying to me, how much money can you make me on the stock market? And I'm just like, well, that's not how it works. So that just goes to show the gaps, I think, in financial literacy. And so maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the gaps.
Yeah. There's a huge gaps. And if you actually observe the most successful people in life, they grab their children from a very young age and kind of indoctrinate them in the way that they build wealth. Yeah. And if you look at the Rothschilds, the Carnegies, the elite of the elite, the Rockefellers, they're bringing in those kids with a way of creating wealth. You look at a popular person at the moment, you look at Trump, and you look at like all his kids, and they're just like miniature versions of him. Yeah. So there's this indoctrination into how to create a fulfilling life. I think what has happened, especially from migrant families, okay? They've come from either war-torn countries of very low poverty. They've come to Australia with the hope of being prosperous, yeah? So their mindset is simply around just making sure you've got a roof over your head and not being caught up in the atrocities of the places that they came from. And that's all they taught. And I bless them for that. I bless them for the opportunities that my grandparents gave to my parents and what my parents have given to me. However, now we are in a different level. Now we're at a different stage. We need to start talking to our children around things like the stock market. The stock market isn't a gloomy kind of scary thing that I grew up with my grandparents telling me, like, don't go in the stock market. It's like playing roulette. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can actually safely invest in the stock market relative to your risk profile and your time horizon in the stock market. Whereas, for example, when they would say things like it's safe as houses, I hate that term. So it's just the education around wealth creation tools. But I think the next frontier is around teaching kids the right wealth behavior habits from a young age. Like we teach our kids to eat certain foods because they're good for you.
Yeah.
Create good financial habits because they're good for you as well.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to try and talk about today.
Yeah. And so what are some of the tips that you would give to parents, some little things that they can do?
So a really, really good one as well is to gamify a lot of the techniques that you want to do with young children. Okay, so for example, one of the things that we did with our son and we're now doing with our youngest boy is around, we helped him to identify the difference between assets and liabilities. So I want to take one step back. For the parents out there who haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, go and read the book. Okay, it's a really, really good read. It's one of the most popular books in regards to finance, but it teaches you one thing around the identification between assets and liabilities. The house you live in is not an asset. Yes, it's not an asset. If you think about that, An asset is something that derives an income and puts money in your pocket. Okay, simple.
Yeah.
A house you live in, you pay rates, you pay bills, that does not put money in your pocket. An investment property, on the other hand, is a asset because that puts money in your pocket. And so it teaches kids around the identification of assets and liabilities. So what we did was created a little A4 sheet, wrote down the assets on one side, wrote down the liabilities, and all we did was say, Noah, connect the dots. Which ones are assets and which ones are liabilities? So now, after years and years and years of repetition, I can say to my son, asset or liability, asset, liability, asset, liability. Now, why is that so important? The next addition to this was saying, you need to get obsessed with buying assets, not liabilities. So when he thinks about it and goes, okay, well, I can buy a really, really good car, but that's going to take money out of my pocket. Do I want that? Now, after that, so you gamify that. So it's a simple game scenario. The other one is, like I've already talked to you about with your children, getting them involved in money itself, okay? And I'm not talking about what they teach at schools in regards to what a coin is. It's a 20 cent, it's a 50 cent. The school will do that.
Yep.
Yeah? I'm talking about, okay, this is money going into your account. This is money going out of your account. This is how it works. Also, when you buy an item like, I don't know, let's say you buy a $600 TV. Explain to them the amount of hours of work it takes for you to get that TV. So they understand the process behind it. Now, obviously different kids come in different ages. If you're then looking at teenagers, you need to teach them around money systems to save and invest before they spend their money. You know, if they're going and working at Macca's, I can tell you when they first get their first paycheck, they will be like, oh, that is amazing. So you have an opportunity at the most amazing time for them to work hard to get rewarded. And they'll never have that experience again. To teach them to say, okay, well, now you've earned your $500. You have an option to go buy some new Jordans and blow it all, and you have to work again. Or if we can do this and compound over a period of time, that you're then going to have the endless amount of supply of Jordans if that's what you want. Now, you've heard me, what I've said is I'm linking it up to things in their terms. You can't reward kids in the terms that me and you talk about. You know, me and you talk about time. Yeah. You know, we run off our feet and we just love more time. So everything we do and the decisions we make around time. You talk to a kid about time.
Yeah.
Come on. They're not, so you can't be prepared that you're going to have this new Warren Buffett straight away that's going to come in and go bang, 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 bang. No, but let's reward it. You do this, you get that.
Yeah.
So building a effort and reward system and talking about those trade-offs that you're doing with your daughter is a really, really good starting point. And then get them involved in just like hearing you. You know, I'm sure that my sons just hear me talk about money all the time and techniques and talk about like life. I think the biggest thing that I've learned in my time as being a parent is teaching my kids that money isn't what's going to make them happy. It's the vehicle to put into something that will make you fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so because I could easily turn my kids into like wealth creation ninjas and never care about anyone in life and not have a fulfilled life at all.
Yeah.
It'd actually be pretty easy for me to do that. But trying to teach them to be ethical and, you know, really fun-loving kids and enjoy life, and that's probably been a little bit harder for me, to be honest with you.
Yeah. You touched on a couple of good points there, actually. So, you know, when someone does start working, or even when they're young, you know, they might earn some money, they might do some chores, earn some money. So you've got a couple of options. So you've got the option of spending that money, like you said, well, this is how many hours that we need to work in order to spend the money. We can save a portion of it. And then I think the most important thing is to teach children to give, not only just money-wise, but for ourselves. For example, if we don't buy very many toys, but if there's a new toy that comes home, well, we need to have a look at the toys that we have and maybe gift one away. So then it teaches them the appreciation of gifting something and making somebody else happy, but also you're happy because you've got the new toy as well. You know, what are the things that you guys kind of work through?
Gratefulness is and gratitude is one of the biggest talking points in our household. As you start to build wealth and become more affluent, you can find yourself getting into the routine that if your kids want something, you can just get it.
Yeah.
And they observe that.
Yeah.
one thing that we've done in our household is, and each to their own here, so please don't take me on this one, we pray in our house. So we pray for what we have. We take a moment every single day to appreciate what we've been given and what we have in front of us. And taking a moment to reflect on how grateful we are has instilled the ability for our children to be appreciative of what they've got. Second bit on our technique has been traveling the world. You know, it's really important. I know it's something that you do. In Australia, we are in one of the most prosperous, amazing countries in the world. You know, if you look at about the 26 million people that are here, how many are in the poverty line? How many are going without? We have a beautiful system that they'll never really fall on really hard times in Australia. Whereas when you go to places like Turkey, you go to places like Croatia, you go to places in Asia, you know, the difference between the rich and the poor, there's a huge discrepancy between the two. And so for our children to walk past and be like, look at that kid, 6 years old with rice on his back, helping his mum put food on the table. I'm very fortunate that we've been able to do that because it's our kids are very, from what I've observed, they're very grateful for what they've got. Now, they're not like that all the time. Sometimes they're little pricks and they want, so it's not like they're perfect children.
Yeah.
But I need to remind them, and that's what it is about being a parent. So, and why is it so important? Because one thing that I've reflected on in myself is I amassed wealth from a very young age. And I could have used that to be like the playboy, you know, have the cars, the watches, and each to their own, please. If that's what you want, but I chose not to. For me, it's around having a peaceful life, one where I have a lot of time with my children, and that's what I want to pass on for them. And the people that I gravitate to and the people that really warm to me and my friendship connections and clients and that share similar values to what I've got. So for those who want to kind of do similar to what I've done, gratitude and giving back is so important. And that's also role models from the parents. I'm big on giving back to people that are less fortunate than us. You know, one toy comes in, toy goes out to St. Vinny's or you know, whatever it's going to be. But also as well too, dad participates in CEO Dare to Cure, you know, raising money for kids with cancer so I am a role model for my children. But that goes, Ayten, into anything, you know, like you're on a tram and there's a pregnant lady walking in, get off your seat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it goes into, I think, every facet of your life. You are a parent. It's the hardest job that we will ever have. But these beautiful young children are observing every single move.
Yeah.
So you think they're going to turn a blind eye to what you do with your finances?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's all a part of that gratitude that comes in it. But I've got boys, obviously. I'm trying to grow my boys into be gentlemen and to be respectful people and to not be wicked and not take advantage of other people for their financial gain or for any gain.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to kind of, you know, it could have gone the other way for me. For example, I didn't have much when I was growing up. I had to earn it. I had to, you know, whatever I wanted, you know, I had to work hard for it. But it could have gone the other way. You could have gone, okay, well, I didn't have this, so I'm going to give my children this. And I think that's a trap that we fall into because then it kind of leads us to keeping up with the Joneses. So, you know, so-and-so's got that toy, and my daughter comes home all the time. She says, oh, I want that toy, and someone's got that toy. But then we have to have a discussion about, okay, well, we can't have everything. We need to pick what we want. And then, you know, we can't just because, you know, it's available to us. I mean, we could probably go out and buy whatever she wanted. Every time we go to Kmart or go, you know, to the shops, if she wanted something, we could buy it. But that doesn't instill those values in them. And in the future, like you were talking about before with buy now, pay later, it's so easy to get a credit card these days. It's so easy to think, okay, buy now, pay later is easy. I don't have the money for it now, but that's okay. I can pay it in full installments over the next few weeks. But, you know, these are the things that we need to instill because in the future, these kids are going to inherit, you know, this wealth. You know, that's all part of the intergenerational wealth. If they don't know how to manage money now, how difficult is it going to be when they come into money, when they're 30 or 40, where they don't know how to manage their money, let alone when they come into this massive inheritance? How can we, is it the schools? Is it the parents? Where does the responsibility lie?
The responsibility lies on you as the parent.
Yeah.
Because it's your children. It's no one else's. Also, we can't rely on the education system to pick up the slack for everything that we do. One thing that you mentioned and around you could have gone the other way. It's very interesting. We've heard this a lot in anything we do. We do things in moderation. That's the best way how to do it. And I use myself with my addiction to chocolate. So we never used to have a lot of chocolate. I can't remember, I was older. I can't remember how old I was, but I first had like McDonald's when I never used to have Macca's when I was young. But then as I grew up, because I didn't have it, I just binged.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just ballooned because I keep eating chocolate. I keep eating fast food. And so we need to be mindful. As much as we're telling you to have these techniques and do these things with your children, does that mean that my sons can't splurge and enjoy good things? Of course they can. But it's around moderation and teaching them the fundamentals behind that decision. Yeah, it's like if you have chocolate, you can keep having chocolate, but you are going to be overweight.
Yes.
Yeah? Your choice, and you hopefully have taught them what the right choice is. So I will have chocolate, but I don't binge on chocolate anymore because I know the consequences that sit with that. You can continue to buy Jordans every day or every week, but if you continue to buy Jordans, well, that house that you dreamed of having, well, that's likely not going to happen, son or daughter. So it's very interesting you said that, because I have observed a lot of people that have come from wealth or from not wealth and them having the opposite to their parents as well too. So it's very interesting to what happens with children as well. And we have to appreciate that it's difficult out there, guys. Marketing and influencers and all of that. We're going into an age where our kids are being influenced on their decisions so much by social media and not by you as a parent.
Yeah.
So what do you think we can do as parents, or what do you think parents can do to get around that? What's your thoughts around that? I know your kids a little, but it's something that I'm even starting to think about now.
Yeah. So, it's a difficult question because, at the moment, my kids just watch, Peppa Pig or whatever else it might be. But, they do come across things that, for example, on YouTube that you're not familiar with once they start getting into phones and, whatever else it is, technology. I think just going back to the point of having the conversation early on, making sure that you have the conversation in front of the children. So, for example, like you were mentioning about, if you're going to buy an investment property, having the conversation, taking the kids with you so they're exposed, at the kitchen table, have a discussion about, okay, well, these are the expenses that we've got. These are the things that we need to work towards. I think the most important thing is having goals as well. If you want a toy, okay, well, we need to work towards that toy. You need to save your money up. So it might be $2 here, $5 there. We need to work towards that goal. If you don't have enough money for that toy or, whatever it is, then we can't buy it. But also experiences. I feel like experiences are underrated. You spending time with your family, that's a memory that they're going to take with them until forever. They're not going to look back and say, I've got that Barbie doll. I wanted it for so long and my mum bought me my Barbie doll. It just doesn't work like that. It's the experience and the conversations, the ongoing conversations.
As your kids get older and they move into their teenage years, and we're talking about like 17, 18-year-olds, there's decisions that parents need to come across, which is like, do we buy them a car? Do we buy them a house? And, me and Borja have already spoken about conversations around this, like how much do you look after them?
Yeah.
And there's two things I want to talk about with the linking of social media and influencers and this decision-making here. We need to teach our kids as early as you can. If you haven't already and you've got teenage kids, start now, is they need to acknowledge that life of the influencer life and social media is not real. It's both not real as in like the percentage of people that can actually do that is very, very small, like minute, coupled with that most people that are in that life are fake and are actually leasing and debting the situation. And I know that because we have people come to us that are influencers, and I can tell you something right now, the ones that show more are the ones who have less behind closed doors. So you need to talk about that as early as possible. Second bit is around the decision making around looking after your children. Because as your kids grow up and as you become more affluent yourself and establish yourself, they're inherently going to do that as well. And so I've talked about this around how much can you give them without them spoiling them to then detrimentally not affect them. So it even goes back to like the toy scenario with the younger child. But when we talk about the big ticket items like a house, a car, what's your thoughts around that, and how much is too much?
Yeah, it's a good question because my husband and I have this ongoing discussion about what his views are and what my views are. And so my views are you give them a good education and you provide what you can for them. And then what they do with that is up to them. Whereas my husband has a different opinion where he's like, well, we need to help them out. We know what that might be in the future is obviously very different for each child. But yeah, it's interesting that we have, my opinion might change in the future. But we have clients that come up and say, well, houses are so expensive these days. So they do want to help their children with, deposits or buying a car. And, some clients want to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars and some clients want just a little bit. I mean, it's really difficult to kind of determine what have you guys kind of come up with?
Well, there's two answers to this one. Answer number one is I'm helping a lot of clients through this scenario and I've helped them on many times. And I've had very, very affluent clients that have gone to help their kids immensely and I've stopped them. Simply for the fact that they're giving the money to the children without teaching them the behaviours. So it's like the stats around NBA players, for example, having 5 years worth of a career, earning $50 million, and then in 4 years it's all gone. Or the people that win lottery, and then you're literally giving your children money with no behaviours and no good behaviours around money. So if my kid doesn't know about money management, I'd be very apprehensive. I'd be like, give them the minimum so that they don't like fall too hard. And that's what I've had to do with most of our clients because the clients have usually, their kids have come to them in bad spots. Like, oh my gosh, dad, I'm going to lose my house. And and the dad has gone like into protect and provider mode, which you do, and is like, that's fine. I'll just pay off the house. And you're like, no. Don't pay the house off. Like, just pay off like months, like maybe give him like 6 months of like repayment so that they get back up on their feet. And in the 6 months, let's do an intensive like learning program so that they never do this again because they're not learning from those mistakes.
That's right.
So the car scenario for me is around, it's their first big ticket item usually. So I probably want my boys to save for their first car. And when they do get to their savings goal, I will reward them at the end of their saving goal. I hope they don't go back and watch this. Yeah. But the reality is, let's say they want to save 20 grand for a car. I might, once they do save the 20, not tell them and go, all right, well, maybe there's another 10 so they can get a better car. Yeah. Because I want to see that behavior and that habit. Same thing happens with the house scenario. However, because I'm a paranoid parrot and I want to keep the money in the family as much as possible, likelihood is that they're going to go into a house with a partner, which there skews my scenario because I'm like, okay, well, if someone takes half of the car, good luck to them. Yeah, someone takes half of $1 million property, different scenario. So my asset protection hat does come on in regards to how can I protect the family. However, remember with my boys, I'm investing 20, 30 years of teaching them the right behaviours. So I have full intention, not when I die, but when I am living, for my boys to take care of all of the wealth.
Yeah.
So it's really determined on how much your kids can handle money and then proving to you that they can handle money. If one of my boys is on drugs and blows all the money, you think that I'm just going to go, here's it all?
Yeah.
So that is my answer to the question around it is determined on their ability to manage money and how wise they are with money. And if they're not, well, then we've got more upskilling to do. They won't get their pen license until they know how to write properly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not just, these are the skills and then go away and do it. It's more an ongoing conversation from the get-go until even in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s and their 50s, because we're all learning. Everyone's still going through the learning process. So it's not a set and forget, yep, this is all you need to know, and then go off and do it. You mentioned a book earlier. What are some of the other, maybe books or YouTubes or TED Talks or whatever it might be that you might recommend for some of the clients to kind of get them involved and then get the kids involved?
Yeah, so for all the viewers and listeners, I think you're doing a really good thing just listening to the podcast and watching. And, hopefully we put it in terms that people can go off and pass this on to their friends and family and their kids to listen to and watch. But I think besides obviously Cash Talk, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a great one by Robert Kiyosaki. I'm not going to remember all the authors, so please hold me to this. Richest Man in Babylon, great book. Love it. I love my history, and it kind of intertwines like a historical view in regards to that. So Richest Man in Babylon is a great one. We're doing that with Noah as we speak. Where the Little Book of Behavioral Investing by James Mortimer, understanding the behavior around investing. So this is probably more for like kids that are exploring to build wealth. So this is maybe for your 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. This is really good for them to understand the behaviors around investing. Yep. And I think that one of the biggest things is around that you get caught up with as you're growing up is around trying to pick the right stocks or trying to pick the right things. And that's important, but what's more important is your behavior. Yeah, it's the biggest determining factor of if you'll become successful or not. So that's a great book. The Psychology of Money. I think that I do this, and I recommend you guys to do this. Grab the Psychology of Money. You can grab like snippets of it. I put it into ChatGPT, and I tell them to dumb it down like into a 7-year-old's version. It is a great book. He's done an absolute awesome thing. This is Morgan Housel. He's also got a podcast as well too, which I've been re-listening to. So listen to his podcast as well. But there's plenty of books out there. The Barefoot Investor is really good to teach fundamentals and foundations as well too. Just also be wary of some books as well. And I'll say this, like I do say that there's a lot of books out there that are international bestsellers that are paid to be international bestsellers, and they're really teaching them to be like a funnel for their books. These are books that I'm talking about that are teaching your kids about the fundamentals, and that's the most important. Teaching them the right behaviors. I can't stress to you enough teaching them the right behaviors. And I think a really, really important one, which coincides with teaching them about money, is teaching them just how to be a good person and live a fulfilled life. Yeah. You don't want to teach your kids how to be this greedy kind of not giving back kind of mogul that, that fat cat that just doesn't care about anyone. Yeah. You need to teach them, because the most successful people that I see are not the ones with the most amount of zeros. I don't look and say, Nelson Mandela was really rich or Muhammad Ali was really rich. They impactfully changed a lot of people's lives. They used what they had, if it be money or power or whatever it is, for good deeds. And that's the legacy that I want to instill on my children, and I'm sure that a lot of people want to do the same. Yeah.
So, for me, the takeaway is about behaviours. It's all about, it starts with our behaviour. It starts with the conversations, and then being grateful and giving back.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, Ayten, I think that's a wrap for today. Yeah. That was an awesome first podcast from you. I'm going to have you back on. So hopefully you've had some great takeaways from today, and hopefully enjoy the episode, and see you next time. Cheers.